Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. Also, I want to say welcome and welcome to the 4th Congressional District from my lovely bride, Christy, and our two wonderful daughters. We are truly blessed. Every day, whether it's a hard day or not a hard day, I just wake up and look, I'm healthy and I live in America. After that, you can work anything else and work anything out. You just can't forget that, right? I want to thank my good friend, Loman Henry, and his wife, Carol. I got involved in this really in earnest, and Loman's campaign for state treasurer was one of my first opportunities to be involved. Hey, Kathy, I could barely see you. Oh, Mr. Anton, thank you, and thanks for the intake. And I got to tell you this too. Loman, at some point, became in charge of the Pennsylvania Leadership Conference, and as a guy who was working a job, running my own business, but really, really interested, I always wished that I could come to the PLC. But, you know, oftentimes I couldn't afford my employees' insurance, let alone my own, and oftentimes didn't have the money or I didn't have the time, and I couldn't be in the seats. And so just imagine how amazing and thrilling it is to be up here with you. It is an incredible thing. You know, I will tell you, Keith stole a lot of my thunder. That's what I guess we do to each other. And we love Keith. So I'm going to go through, I got a couple notes here. I'll try to throw most of them out. But look, Congress has actually been, and I know you're not hearing it, we've been pretty busy. The Congressional Review Act stuff where we clawed back, or are in the process of clawing back, all these regulations that the administration put in just prior to leaving or maybe a little before. That is historic and monumental. I mean, we talk about people, parents being able to choose things for their children in education. You talk about OSHA rules just outside of the scope of anything they're allowed to do. The Bureau of Land Management taking on environmental concerns. And then there's the EPA just running amok for very incremental gains in a world where the cleanest country on the planet, where instead of helping our citizens thrive, we're just driving our businesses overseas. It is unprecedented what we have been able to do even in 60 days, and I would just submit to you this would be so much more if the Democrats, no disrespect intended, but for the love of God, help your country. The people elected Donald Trump, and these are his cabinet nominees. These are the people's cabinet nominees. And if you look back to President Obama's term, when the president is still waiting on nominees to be confirmed right now. And that this is their plan. This is their plan to disrupt and slow down governance, to slow it down, not for what's good for the country, but they think it's good for their party. And we just ask them, we beseech them, please, consider your country, be American. Be American. How about that? There are some upsides. For my whole life, I watched this press. And I said to myself, does anybody else see what I see, right? And I think individually we all did that. And we knew it in our hearts, we knew it in our heads, but it was hard to prove. How do you prove their bias, their over-the-top bias? Well, now, look, it took Donald Trump to do it. God bless him. He was in your face, but there's no question now where the press is. And at least the rest of America knows what we know now, right? This is wonderful. You know, maybe the downside or maybe the upside is that the political season, somebody said that to me once, well, is it political season? And for me, every day's political season, right? Kathy Rapp knows this well. You always have an opportunity to make a first impression and a good impression, and if you're elected official every day, you're earning, as you should be, you're earning the privilege to hold your office. But things have changed now where the campaign ended, but the rhetoric and the acrimony didn't stop. Now, I remembered when President Obama became the president, I was sorely disappointed, and I was concerned, frustrated, worried for my country. But I acted with dignity and civility, and I brought my arguments to the table, and because I believe in the things that I argue for, I believe in the facts. What we see now is hysteria, and quite honestly, I think it's disrespectful to our countrymen. But listen, if that's how folks want to act, I think it only helps our cause, right? There's a civility to this operation. Like Keith said, we passed the REINS Act because as much as we're happy that, and we're elated that there's a President Trump, and we are elated that there's a President Trump in the White House, but there won't always be. There might not always be, right? So we passed this REINS Act to make sure that the socialists, and let's face it, The Democrat Party is not the Democrat Party of old. I go to church with older people that have been Democrats their whole lives, and they believed in what they believe in an old party that stood for the little guy. And that's who they are. But that's not who their party is. They have gone completely off the deep edge. And we got to watch this thing called the Overton Window, if you're familiar with that, which changes our political discourse and keeps moving things to the left. We're seeing that right now with health care. And it's up to us, the people in this room, to talk to the members in your community to say, hold on a second, why is this now acceptable when 10 years ago you would have said this is crazy? That's what's happening. And so we got to keep on passing bills like that to make sure that when the next leftist gets into the White House, if that happens, that we are protected, that the citizenry is protected. So we're happy to do that. If the Senate can ever get past this Democrat logjam that's just been put up for the sake of obstructionism, if nothing else, I'm hoping that they'll finally be able to take a vote on that thing. I will tell you I'm in a few committees that are important, I think, to the nation: Homeland Security, Foreign Affairs, and Transportation. In Homeland, we are setting the predicate for the president to deal with the Iran nuclear crisis, to deal with Russia. And Keith talked about that a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. To deal with China. We're going to talk about that a little bit more, too. And if you don't know, maybe you don't know, but China is really they had a huge effort in space and on the moon, believe it or not, and around the moon regarding our satellite array and protections. You're not hearing a lot about this, but America has to stay engaged in outer space as well. Foreign Affairs. Like I said, a lot of things going on there. Transportation, we are looking forward to working with the president on an infrastructure package. We're traveling the same roads. We're going to the airports. We see the trains and so on and so forth. And if you've traveled abroad to you go to the UAE and go land at that airport, you will be amazed at the scale and the beauty of the thing. And this is America. This is where these things should be happening. And I would submit to you that our priorities have been misplaced. And again, that's because of 40 or 50 or 60 years of just sheer outright liberalism. We cannot stand for it anymore. This is constitutional. We must do our job, but we must pay for it, which means choosing priorities. Now, let's talk about what all the buzz is, because I know you want to. I don't know. Keith didn't spend a lot of time on it, and I don't know if Lou's going to, but I want to talk about the Affordable Care Act. Folks, I think we make this all too hard. We make this all too hard. This is pretty simple. We just want to do what we told our voters that we were going to do. That's it. That's what we want to do, right? Now, I don't want to criticize the play call, because this is our team, right? I don't want to criticize the play call. From my standpoint, to me, I think we probably could have replaced or had an alternative. I don't really like replace, because I don't want to replace their version of socialism with our version of socialism. But we could have had an alternative, right? Get an alternative in place first and talk to the American people about it. Let them see our vision, and then gut this thing and repeal it like we promised we would do. Stand up for our promises. You know, I'm not a guy that just said it in the campaign. I'm a guy that believes it. I believe it, and I believe in it. So when I give my word, I give my word, and that word doesn't change between my constituents, my bosses, my employers. It doesn't change between them or the Speaker or the President. That's my word. That's just how it has to be. So I would say this. So you're on the field, and the play call doesn't work, right? You mess up first down. You don't even make a yard, maybe. What do? We don't walk off the field, right? You go back in the huddle, you dust yourself off, and you get back in the game. That's the only way to win. The point is not to do it fast. The point is to do it right. Let's get it correct. I want you to know that this is my team. This is our team, and I love it. I've been a Republican since I was in first grade. And I'm dead serious about that. I told my folks who to vote for. I was concerned because they think they were heading the wrong way, but I got them straight. But But as a Republican, and even as a Democrat, it's each one of your jobs and our jobs to help define our party. That's who we define it. We can't let somebody else do that. And so it's important that we stand for something, right? I heard a rumor that they might bring back the same proposal and offer it again, and I would agree with Newt Gingrich that I'm very concerned about that play call, and I hope we don't do that. All of us want to get to yes, all of us want to be helpful, but this is what I told folks. The ACA, Obamacare, is bad for our country. It's bad for our citizens. It makes health care too expensive. It makes access too difficult. If what our legislative effort doesn't make access easier and doesn't drive down costs, I don't know how I face my boss. And so any bill that we run, it's simple. We make this way too hard. We said we were going to repeal it. We said costs were going to be lower and access was going to be greater. How about we just do that? That's what I want to do. In my opinion, the bill doesn't address the rising health care costs. And I will tell you this, to me, if you just break it down, the ACA or Obamacare was just a financing scheme. It's a financing scheme, right? But it didn't do anything to drive down the cost of care. It did something to get everybody some kind of coverage. It actually forced them to, right, under threat of law. But the only way we're going to get it right is to get to the issue, which is the cost of care, right? We have we have too few resources, right? The country spends, I don't know, $600 billion a year more than it takes in on a good year, maybe $1 trillion. Under the last 8 years, a bunch of years at $1 trillion. That's unsustainable. We have to find a way to drive down the cost. That is the answer so that everybody in the room and people not in the room that would like to come to this room can afford it. And this bill, in my opinion, didn't do that. So, I think we're looking for a free market solution, free market and a fair market that provides transparency so we know what the cost is. People are just like us. They want the choice. They want the flexibility. They want to know that they can leave this job and go to the next job and not have to compromise their health care. They want to know that there's a plan where they can invest in themselves and keep their money and spend it on their kids or their aging parents if necessary. They want to know that there's not going to be frivolous lawsuits just because of some mistake that bankrupts them or their practitioner. They want to know that that tort reform is provided. They want to know that they can move from state to state. Folks, none of the things I just discussed are in the bill that we're talking about right now. And with all due respect, I think it's important that, if you're going to have association health plans, whether you belong to the NRA or if you belong to AARP, pulling those people together, all those people together, drives down the cost for all of us. That's not in the bill. How do we go out and tell our people we did the best that we could, if amendments aren't allowed, so that, look, maybe Perry's amendment doesn't make it in, but I got to come home and say, look, I took a shot. My shot failed, so this is the best we can do. But if I can't offer an amendment, my goodness, then I can't come home in good faith and talk to you about that. We need something that empowers people, empowers individuals, citizens, not insurance companies and not Washington, D.C. I'm going to talk a little bit about tax reform. It hasn't been overhauled since 1986. We're driving, I knew this all too well, Pennsylvania in particular, the highest corporate tax rate, not in the country, but in the world for much of my time as a Pennsylvania legislator. How do we expect to be competitive with the world? This is a global economy, so we've got to do it. My goal is to reduce the cost to citizens and make it more simple, right? I was just with my chief of staff on the way here. We had to make one stop before we got here and drop off her tax at the accountant. At the accountant. Now, nothing against accountants and nothing against my chief of staff. I drop my stuff off at the accountant as well. If you're working a job, right, in America, why must you take your taxes to an accountant? Isn't that saying something wrong about our system? I should just be able to fill something out and send it in, and oh, by the way, one of the reasons we take it to an accountant is because we're scared to death of our government. It's supposed to be the other way around, folks. Those folks are supposed to be scared of us. I will tell you, we're talking about a tax bill that is revenue neutral, right? And I think you will hear about a thing called the border adjustability tax, which means it's revenue neutral, right? We're going to save you money here, but we're not going to take any money from the government. Now, you can see I'm not Albert Einstein, but as long as the government's getting the same amount of money and I'm a citizen paying, what the heck does that mean? Whether I pay on April 15th or the 11 months of the year, it's the same amount of money if it's revenue neutral. The point is we want to pay less because we think that the government takes too much from us. They don't need as much, and it's just our money, and we'll spend it where we need to spend it, not have the government do it. You know, they say that Donald Trump is a populist. President Trump is a populist. What does that mean, populist? It means he comes from the people. He speaks to the common man and woman. What the heck does that mean? Donald Trump just won as a populist. You know what it means to me? In the face of the media onslaught who tells us that, you know, they're right about everything and we should think the things that they think, the country just proved we are a center-right country. We are a conservative country. That's populist. They don't want to say conservative, but that's what it means. That's why he won, because the things he talks about, Neil Gorsuch, lower tax rates, getting rid of Obamacare, being for the people, draining the swamp. That's conservative. That's conservative, folks. Now, let's just talk about that a little bit, because we have a big tent. There's a lot of people in this conservative movement, and we welcome everybody, and we're not going to agree on everything. But we got to decide at some point whether we're casual conservatives or committed conservatives, right? It's easy to be casual, right? Well, this is what I stand for. Okay, we'll put up a vote that shows that. Well, I get a little squeamish at that. You can't, folks, this is not the time. This is it, right? This opportunity of the Senate, the House, and the presidency, all in one party, all in the conservative party, doesn't happen too often. This is our opportunity. This is no time to get a week back, right? We need to be committed. I'm often told, look, we just got to do something. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. That's what I'm often told, right? And I say to the people that shoot for the lowest standard, for the least common denominator, don't let the bad, don't make the bad be the enemy of the good. Conservatives, I will tell you, I think that conservatives see people, when we see somebody passing on the street, we see unlimited potential. We see something good in every person we see. We want to see them be everything that they can be, only limited by themselves. Unfortunately, in this day and age, as I've gone through my life, I see that government now limits people. I think about my own story. You know, when I got elected to this job, and in a way I wasn't expecting it, right? I rolled the dice, right? And Kathy knows this. It was like the first time I got elected to the State House. I didn't expect that one either, but I was in the hotel room. They were counting up the votes, and as a matter of fact, I wasn't even in the hotel room. I figured it was going to be a late night, and it was going to be a squeaker, and I might be blessed by God to win. And I got a call. My wife came, and I was taking a shower because I'd been out at the polls all day, and she said, "They want you down in York right now." And I said, "Well, I'm in the shower. I don't think they're going to want to see this." But she said, "The numbers are in." And I said, "The numbers can't be in. It's like 8:30 or something like that." And she said, "No, the numbers are in." She started giving me some numbers. And I said, "You can't count that. That's Franklin Town Borough or something. That's Dillsburg. That's where I live. You can't count that." And then she says, "No." She starts naming some precincts in, middle of York County and so on and so forth. So anyhow, I drive down there. I'm in a hotel room. There's people milling around, and it's crowded, and the press is there. My new chief, who wasn't a chief of staff at that time, she came in the hotel room. We were all sitting in there looking at the totals. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what I'm going to say to these people. And she said, "Just tell them your story." And I'm thinking to myself, what the heck is my story, right? And I will tell you, I was just at a project just down in York where they're getting ready to renovate an old dilapidated building where there's no heat and electricity's torn out of it and so on and so forth. And we were down there for this event. And I said to the folks, "These are the floors that I grew up on Berry Hill Street in Harrisburg, right? The poor section of town. And we moved from the poor section of the city to the poor section of the country where the floors were still bare and there was no electricity or running water. We pumped our water out of one of these kind of things into a big metal tub. I took my baths in a big steel tub out on the back porch, and in the wintertime, I will tell you, folks, that is cold. You don't stay in the bathtub long, right? And we worked, we didn't know any better. We just, what we did, we worked hard. And I remember after I started getting involved, I was still either running a business or working on my own stuff, and I would go to political events. I had a bunch of grease underneath my fingernails and stuff because I just changed my own transmission on my truck because I couldn't afford to have anybody change it. But I believed in the free market and the power of the ability of the individual person to make the best decisions for themselves and make the most of themselves. I believed it to my core. You know, I got a job, I worked hard, I decided I needed to go to college, I put myself through school. I never planned on running for office. I was a Republican, I voted, right, and then I started helping out after college. I started helping campaigns because for me, people that were in office, people like me right now, were other people. I was the guy with the dirty fingernails. I helped those people. I thought about those people, but I wasn't those people. And then one day I realized we're all those people. And I said, hey, I could take a shot at this. That's what Republicans believe. That's what conservatives believe, that it's the power of the individual. And I made my own story. And I got to tell you, I pinch myself almost every day. I walk out and I see the Capitol in the morning when I go for a run, the United States Capitol, and that's where I get that's with the privilege of my countrymen to allow me to serve. That's how Republicans see their neighbors and the people that they pass on the street. We got to believe in this, folks. We have to believe in this stuff. You know, our country is headed towards horrific debt. Right now, in 2026, that's 9 years away, we're going to spend more on interest than we do on defense, more than we do on Medicaid. Folks, we have to be committed conservatives. We got to believe in our message, and we got to smile through it. And look, we got to push back because we know the facts and we know the truth. All this stuff that you see about President Trump and Russia, I'm asking, can anybody give me one fact? One. Well, I know I'm not going to see any in here. And I know I'm not going to see anywhere else either, because there aren't any yet, right? We don't convict people in a free country without facts. But I will tell you some facts. I will tell you some facts. When Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State, she made a deal with Vladimir Putin. And you're not going to hear this much on the news. You have to go look it up somewhere. On a place called Skolkovo, which is just outside of Moscow, where we made a deal to transfer American technology to Russia and encouraged our countries to go over and transfer their technology and their patents. And oh, by the way, those companies and the people involved made contributions to the Clinton Foundation or paid Bill Clinton for speeches. And John Podesta, who was working as an agent of the government at that time, took money and didn't declare it on his financial accountability records. Forget his tax returns. That's against the law, folks. We have the evidence. Why isn't the media and why isn't our Justice Department following that? You talk about Russia, and Keith mentioned this. You know, I'm sitting in the Foreign Affairs Committee, and the Democrats, the other folks on the other side of the aisle, are all up in arms about Russia. Oh, my goodness. How could Republicans collude? Do these people have no view of history? Their history. I had to remind them. So I got up to the dais and I said, you know, it was a guy named Alger Hiss that went with Franklin Delano Roosevelt to Yalta to make a deal with Stalin. It was Harry Dexter White and John Service that gave up our plan that turned China at that time into a communist nation. Look at what it's cost our nation. Look what communism has done worldwide and what it's cost the greatest free world in the free nation in the world to deal with. Whether it's been Russia, whether it's been China, whether it's been Cuba, there has been one party in the United States that has welcomed communism. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the Democrat Party. That is their history. We can't let them forget that. We cannot let them forget that. The narrative is important. I just going to close with this. We got a lot of things on our plate. We've got to do a continuing resolution to keep on funding the government. We got a debt ceiling. We got tax reform. we've got to deal with our border, and we've got to help our president deal with our border. We got a transportation bill. We got to get this health care thing done. We have to get it done. We cannot not return to the huddle. We can't have our feelings hurt. We can't take it personally. It is our job. If anybody's going to save this country, it's the Republican Party, it's the Republicans in Congress, and it's the people in this room. We have got to do that. It is just imperative. We need to believe in the principles that we believe in, and then we need to stand up for them. It means making tough choices. Being a conservative is a discipline. It's discipline, right? It's just like anything else that you ever did in your life that was hard, but you knew it was going to pay off in the end. It means instead of going out on Friday night, you got to study for the test. That's just what it means. And you know, you could go out and spend a couple hours and have a good time and fail the test, and then your whole life is less. It means making the tough decisions. The Democrats, the liberals, I'm going to say liberals because I hate to tell you folks, but all liberals are not Democrats, right? Or all Democrats aren't liberal. Well, no, all Democrats are liberal, but I didn't say that, but I'm just saying. We have to be committed to this. We have to explain it. We have to be cheerful. But we have to believe in it, and we must be committed conservatives. If we aren't committed, if we don't stand up for the things we believe in, if we don't stand up for things like life, we can't expect them to. We cannot expect them to. So I would just urge you to stay happy about it, right? Be cheerful, but be committed to your cause. Believe in it, because we got two choices. We got the road to prosperity or the road to serfdom. Choose the road to prosperity. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Perry.